Any interesting bike setup decisions? What did you go with on the day?
I was going to run Explore, but it's an interesting course. It's a really, really fast course with a really steep climb at the end, like a proper 8 to 12 minute climb, depending on if you include the corkscrew and everything. So I knew I wanted to run the biggest chainring possible, but I went to transmission so that I could run a 50 tooth up front, but still have a 50-52 as my bailout gear instead of a 50-46.
So how does that work for someone that's not familiar with it?
So essentially, you divide the front chainring by the rear to get what's called your gear ratio. So if I had run transmission with a 50-52, that's underneath 1. So to put it in perspective, to get that same ratio or close to it on Explore, I would have had to run a 44 tooth front chainring. Also, in terms of efficiency, a rough, I guess, best practice is the bigger the chainring, the less the chain bends, the more efficient it is. So I knew I would be in that biggest gear going up parts of Lookout no matter what, because it's just steep. So essentially what I did is the cassette on the transmission is 10-52, where on the Explorer it's 10-46. So I still have the same fastest gear with a 10 for the flats, the downhill, anywhere that's really pedally, which Sea Otter is notoriously a big power course. There's very little time you're spent coasting. So it's kind of trying to get both ends of that spectrum, which is rare because we're doing a pretty long, steep climb. And I just felt that those first 2 laps could be sub-maximal as the group kind of susses itself out. So I wanted to be able to have a higher cadence while still riding that lower power. And it worked out. My average cadence, I think, ended up being 91 for the day. So
how about tire setup?
I did the 2.2 Air Track, which is the replacement for the Renegade in the front, and then a 50 Tracer, which is our new gravel tire in the rear.
In
hindsight,
inserts?
Nope. I don't really do inserts ever. I don't like the way they make the tires feel. I may run them at unbound just because you don't really need tire feel there. There are a lot of flat left and right hand corners that just don't require much skill, I guess, for lack of another word. Just so extra safety there. But don't normally run inserts.
And will you stick with, sorry to jump ahead to Unbound, we will get into, I know we're going to do a separate pod on that, but is the initial thinking you're going to run mountain bike tires for Unbound, or will you stick with gravel?
I will likely run the 2.2 Air Tracks front and rear.
Interesting. Seems to be the way it's going.
Yeah.
Everyone's geeking out on that at the moment. Was there anything else in terms of tech that you felt gave you an edge on your competition that you got right?
Maybe not an edge, but I guess I got a little with the times this year. I've gone to 40 bars. I've gone to 165 cranks. I've also done aero socks, and I had an aero base layer on, and I'm running the Evade almost exclusively now. So I guess more unseen gains in terms of just trying to optimize where I can. Yeah.
The aero base layer is interesting. I've had some friends that have had it in the tunnel. Are you talking like the mini one looks like a bra with the Rule 28 and some other brands seem to make them?
I have one that Specialized has made. It is not commercially available, but we're working with Bora Hansgrohe this year.
Okay.
So since I work at Specialized, I know the apparel guy, and he was able to get me 1 pair of socks and 1 aero base layer. So if it's good enough for the world tour, it's good enough for me.
I haven't seen the data on them, but I know the problem with the bra ones is, if anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, like a half base layer, they're like something you'd wear to like an S&M night out where your nipples are still exposed.
Yeah.
But the data I've seen on the wind tunnel from those is they're more aerodynamic than not having them when they're super well positioned underneath your speed suit. But if the positioning of the seams is misaligned under your speed suit, they're actually slower than not wearing it at all, which is...
And that's similar data to aero shoe covers, aero socks. Pretty much as soon as you see creases, you're losing some of the gains. But my apparel sponsor, DNA, makes a really nice skin suit. And actually the fabric on the arms is one that is really good to have that dual layer fabric. So sometimes if the fabric on top too is too thick, the ribbing that makes it fast won't actually show through or affect your slipperiness. So yeah, I mean, aero is a bit hard to test until, you know, the sensors that you can put on your bikes yourselves come out. And I firmly believe in the future on climbs we'll be talking watts per kilo, and then on the flats we'll be talking watts per CDA, and you'll be able to see both on your head unit live. I think we're just a few years from that.
I have one of them here. I'm not sure if you played around. I'm using Gimbly, and it's the real-time coefficient of frontal drag sensor. But yeah, it's not quite there where you were saying. I know there's Body Rocket and a few other brands as well are doing similar stuff, but there's a lot of stuff affects that. And to try and put on a pair of aero socks versus regular socks and to get that data, it's just not really there. I think that's going to be a few years away. First 20, 30 minutes of the race, what's that like? Is it total carnage, or do people kind of know their pecking order and there's a little bit of respect for that hierarchy based on last year?
I think people are forced to recognize their pecking order with how fast that start was.
It's a Darwinian pecking order.
Yeah, I think we came out swinging pretty fast. Sea Otter, regardless of being the Fuego XL or this new gravel race, we start up the track. It's kind of the same formula. I didn't have a call up this year because they decided to do top 5 overall from the Grand Prix last year and then top 5 at Sea Otter last year, both of which I narrowly missed. So I knew it was going to be the same thing as always, that the sooner you line up, the better. So I actually started my warm up, I think 25 minutes early, just so I knew I'd get my full warm up in. And I also told my mechanic, Daniel, to essentially have rollers set up at the finish just in case I wanted to hop on them and I could kind of wait in line while rolling. So as soon as I saw people lining up, I was at the tape and I was essentially right behind everyone that got the call up, so second row. And that's
still like
important.
A drag race, like into that first single track, like where Pete Stettner broke his hand a couple of years ago.
It's not that same single track section, and this time it is onto a fire road, but I was a little worried because that fire road is technical in terms of riding it full gas with 100 people next to you. There's ruts, there's a little bit of sand, there's a lot of dust you can't see. So although it's not technical to ride per se, I think the race made it technical. So being up front is still super important. I wasn't too bothered about leading the race at that point or being top 3. I thought, top 10 to 20 would be fine. Essentially, I felt we still do that chicane. So a quick right, quick left. And then there's a little climb and then we start descending. I felt if I was top 10, 15 wheels, that I'm kind of out of that possibility of carnage where someone's dive bombing you because they're not where they want to be. Someone's super tired because they're, riding above their fitness level, crossing wheels, crashing, unclipping, whatever it is. I just didn't want to waste those matches. So it's kind of that fine balance of at the front enough. And I checked that box.
When did the first pivotal moments come?
I think that was the first pivotal moment, honestly. It doesn't feel like it when you've succeeded, but there are riders that started too far back and still made the front group, but they had a few less matches in their match book. So that was the first fight. And then that fire road brings us to the bottom of the second longest climb on course.
Hey everybody, let's take a quick break to talk about the bike I'll be riding this season, Reap. I've been lucky enough to ride all the top brands in the world over the past few years, but these Reap bikes, they're not the same, and I'll tell you why. Reap is the first company I've seen that isn't chasing sales targets and the mass market. They're chasing something very rare, perfection. Every bike they make, it's crafted in the UK factory, and it's not about slapping a Made in Britain label on a bike from a Chinese factory. It's about control. From the first sketch to the final build, they're hands-on, ensuring that every detail is dialed in. That's very rare in an outsourced world of mass production. What sets them apart is innovation. While others pump out the same old designs, Reap's pushing boundaries. They're not following trends, they're setting trends. Think precision and performance, like an F1 car for the road. Absolutely no compromises. And it shows, and you can feel it when you ride the bikes. These bikes are built for riders who demand the best, whether they're chasing podiums or just want a machine that feels like an extension of your body, a piece of art. It's not hype, it's substance. Ride a Reap for yourself and you're riding something crafted with intent. So if you're serious about cycling, check them out. It's reapbikes.com. I absolutely love my one and I couldn't recommend it highly enough. Back to the show.